Welcome to Man in America, a voice of reason in a world gone mad. I'm your host, Seth Holhouse. So today on the show, I've got two guests joining me, my good friend Clay Clark, but also Eric Trump, the son of our president. So we're going to be diving into a lot of different topics facing America right now, but I wanted to give just a little bit of caveat before we get started here. Eric is not his father. And so when if I post something, say, hey, I'm interviewing Eric Trump, most of the comments or some of the comments I get like, hey, ask him about this, ask him about that. The thing is that he's not going to speak on behalf of his father. So there's no use in me saying, Eric, what do you think about Operation Warp Speed or anything like that? Because A, he's his father's son and he's just going to back his father, especially publicly, especially on some small podcasts like mine. So that's not going to get us anywhere. But the thing is that he's not focused on that stuff, right? If you know Eric, which I know him behind the scenes, he's just focused on the lawfare. He's focused on running the Trump empire. He's focused on a lot of these things. Now, if I was sitting down with, President Donald Trump, I would be asking him things like, hey, let's talk about Operation Warp Speed, or let's talk about digital IDs. And these are some topics that I would be comfortable bringing up because I believe in them. But these aren't topics that make sense to bring up with his son, who is not going to throw his dad under the bus to try to appease me as a podcaster. So that's not going to get us anywhere. So I'm just giving you a little bit of kind of like a warning. If that's what you expect to happen in this interview, it's not going to happen. Now, it is going to be a very real interview, a very sober interview about where our country's at, the threat of people calling for civil war, asking the questions about treason. I mean, in my opinion, if you look at what happened in 2020, there was a coup, right? Our government that was supposed to be duly elected through our election process, that was stolen from us. And so some of the questions I have are, will we see justice? We have examples of what I believe to be treasonous activity that is now being opened up and proved. And so I want to find out and see what Eric's thoughts are. It's like, are we going to see justice? Are we going to see, criminals prosecuted for treason? So these are some questions that are really on my mind. So, but also, I want to dig into the battle of good and evil and, what kind of changes that he saw in his dad after Butler and, some questions like that about, how he frames this overall, fight that our country is in from a spiritual perspective, because that's a very important part of this whole thing for me. So I hope you enjoy the interview very much. Eric Trump and Clay Clark. I feel like I'm waking up in some wild reality to just be staring at the two of you on the teleprompter. Thank you so much for being here today. It's great to have you both on the show.
Good to be there, Seth.
Thank you, Seth. We really do appreciate you allowing us to be here, and I could not be more fired up to be with your listeners today.
Absolutely. I should have worn my tie today, but at least I'm kind of in the same color code as you guys. So, there's a lot that I want to kind of dig into. I know definitely, Eric, you have a book that I want to touch on, absolutely, and just ask you some bigger questions. But first, I think just starting off, when you think of the Trump family, it's obviously your dad's the president. He was kind of the figurehead that built the Trump empire as we know it today. A lot of people, I think, aren't as familiar with what your role is, and especially how critical your role is to the Trump empire. So do you want to start with just giving us a little bit of background about what your day-to-day looks like and what you're handling, especially with the load that you've been given now that your dad's not doing any of the business stuff anymore?
Well, my father came to me in 2016, Seth, and he said, listen, honey, I want you to run the company. I had worked in the organization for a long time. I built many of our buildings. I had, run many of our teams, most of our teams. I was very, very passionate about it. I loved everything that was real estate. I loved everything that is the Trump organization, our company. And I took it over at 33. Never, did I think that we were going to see the type of lawfare that we saw in the years that followed. But we've got one of the greatest real estate, hospitality companies anywhere on earth. Obviously, very big into crypto. That's become a big part of our company over the last 2 to 3 years. We really believe in it, especially after being debanked, like so many other conservatives were during that period of time. But no, I am fortunate to have 26 projects in development all over the world right now. Obviously, our core portfolio. So many of you, know so many of our projects. We probably have a building or a property, near you if you live in this country, certainly. But I'm very fortunate to head up the ship and, take that off of his shoulders when he went to Washington, D.C., and I've been running it ever since.
I can't imagine dealing with that on top of the lawfare. You've been subpoenaed, what, 110 times or 100? I mean, how many subpoenas have you been hit with?
Yeah, between myself and the company, 112 subpoenas over a pretty short period of time. I became, I think, the most subpoenaed person in American history. I'm going to verify that, but I've never been able to find through a lot of searches anybody that's even come close to receiving the amount of subpoenas I had, and that's only because they want to destroy our family. They want to take us down. They want to break us, and they weren't able to do so.
It's wild. And Clay, you've also had your kind of legal attacks too, but I think that they pale in comparison to the Trump empire. But I know you've also been the victim of a lot of lawfare as well.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. We were backstage at one of the Reawaken events. Eric was back there. Alina Habba was back there. A lot of Eric's good friends. Kash Patel was back there. Devin Nunes was back there. Somehow I snuck back there. And the conversation was, is there anybody in this group, General Flynn included, that's not been sued or subpoenaed recently? And the answer was no. And I think that's one thing, Eric, if people choose to unapologetically stand with the Trumps or to stand with this Make America Great Again a plan to save America, you're going to be sued. You're going to be subpoenaed. They're going to try to put you under siege. And so when Eric had this title for Under Siege and started talking about this book, I'm going, that sounds like my life, too. So I think Under Siege, in my opinion, is sort of a theme that everybody who's spoken out against the far left can resonate with. Seth, I bet you every one of your listeners has been censored in some way, shape, or form for posting facts and truth on social media, Facebook, etc.
Oh, I mean, even the first video I put out, The Plot to Steal America, which Eric, your father, ended up retweeting it and pinning it, which really was the beginning of my whole career as a podcaster. I had a business at that time. I had people even calling my personal cell phone, give me death threats, and I was just like, where'd this come from? And it was amazing how much the world reacts. But Eric, one question I have for you in terms of Under Siege is the kind of idea of like under siege from who, right? Because there's a lot of enemies. There's a lot of globalist enemies, world leaders that want to see America on its knees. But like when you're pinpointing the enemy, and I think it's a lot of times it's left versus right. But I think it extends so far beyond left versus right. If you look at getting to Soros and him funding a lot of these things and getting in the World Economic Forum, who do you see as being the greatest threats to freedom here in America?
Well, listen, I go into this in a lot of detail in the book. Actually, Clay's one of the few people who's read the entire book, and I bestowed that honor to virtually no one, and I think he'll tell you the same thing. But listen, Under Siege, it's the relentless attacks that was coordinated by the White House against our entire family, vis-a-vis the entire government, whether it's AGs, whether it's DAs all across the country. I mean, Letitia James, Alvin Bragg, Fani Willis, special counsels, Jack Smith, Mueller. They were all put there to do a task. They were all put there. I mean, you had Jack Smith who raided Mar-a-Lago on behalf of the National Archives. Does anybody actually believe that to be the case? Of course it wasn't the case. That's what America was told. And then sure enough, Merrick Garland was behind it, and obviously Joe Biden was behind it. They've weaponized every aspect. Look at what Lois Lerner was doing with the IRS, targeting churches, targeting nonprofits, targeting conservative organizations. Look at what they did to go after YouTube, to go after Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, to make sure that articles were censored, that the Biden laptop, the whole story about Biden's laptop was written off as quote-unquote Russian propaganda. The government targeted everyone. They targeted our free speech. They targeted religious organizations. They raided Mar-a-Lago. They spied on our campaign. They weaponized the DOJ. They weaponized the FBI. They made up the Russia hoax, and the whole Russia collusion story, which was completely fabricated. They tried to impeach my father the first time. Then they tried to impeach him again. Then they went after Kavanaugh. Then they subpoenaed me 112 times. Then they took him off the ballot in Colorado. Then they took him off the ballot in Maine. They've done everything they could. They put his mugshot all over the place. And you know what? Every single time it backfired. And then they tried to kill my father, not just in Butler, Pennsylvania, but also in West Palm. Then you just saw what they did with my friend Charlie Kirk 2 days before Under Siege came out. They killed somebody that I sat on that stage with 100 times, who was a friend of mine, who knew Clay, who knew all of us. We were all good friends. They tried to put our family and our movement under siege. And that's why I named the book, exactly what it is. And frankly, I think the American people have had enough with it. I can tell you, I went to #1 almost instantly on Amazon. We're 7 days away from the book going live. We went to #1 in virtually every category, in memoirs and biographies and nationally and in government.
Let me ask you something. How much time do you spend every day clicking around online? Searching, scrolling, juggling a dozen tabs, it eats up a lot of time. Well, there's a new AI-powered web browser from Perplexity called Comet, and it's completely changing how you use the internet. Comet doesn't just give you answers, it actually does things for you. It clicks, types, scrolls, and gets stuff done in real time, like booking flights, finding hotels, ordering food, even summarizing long articles or videos. Now, I'll be honest, I'm hesitant about AI overall, but I started using Comet as a way to get around censorship. For example, when I search on Google, does the government have weather modification projects? All I get are fact checkers, official statements, and the same tired conspiracy theory label. But when I ask Comet the same question, it actually pulls up the real documents, declassified government files, congressional reports, even weather control patents. Hard facts, not filtered spin. So if you could use a good tool that gives you extra help with online tasks while also arming you with information to prove to your friends that you're not as crazy as they think you are, this could be a great solution. So you can try Perplexity's new AI browser Comet by heading to pplx.ai/MIA. And when you download it, you're also going to get a free month of Rumble Premium. So that link is in the description below. Again, it's pplx.ai/MIA. So take back your time and take back the truth online.
I think people are voting with their pocketbooks, and I think people are trying to stand with the movement, and they were all hurt. We were all influenced by this. If you were a conservative and you had a voice, they came after you and attacked you. No different than what we're seeing on TV right now with Jack Smith, targeting senators, spying on senators. Where have we seen this before? So it was all of government, and it was all coordinated by the people at the top to try and take down Donald Trump, his family, and the greatest political movement ever created.
And so I think one of the big questions that I have, I think it's also the question you're going to hear a lot of people talking about, especially those that understand the role of the Constitution and see what's happening. When I witnessed what happened in 2020, for me, it wasn't about these mysterious ballots showing up or the lost thumb drives. For me, it was a coup. It was a coordinated effort to overthrow a justly elected political official, the leader of a country. And it's so much bigger than just the bantering over, well, at 3 a.m. those ballots were justified. I mean, that's what happened. It was a coup. And we saw our country under 4 years of Biden really a lot, I'd say, is treasonous activity, opening the border, intentionally targeting conservatives, et cetera. And one of the questions that I have, I think a lot of people have, is when will we see justice? Because I think that when you look at the people and look at the information that's now coming out, the documentation on the Steele dossier, Crossfire Hurricane, Spygate, these aren't just criminal activities that you get a slap on the hand and get 5 years in a cushy penitentiary. This is treason, right? When you're going against the Constitution at that level, it's treason. So do you think that we're going to start seeing some more serious political justice or happening, and not necessarily politicizing the Justice Department, but actually bringing people on both sides of the aisle that to the courts and properly prosecuting as treason for their actions?
Seth, it was the biggest topic in this entire book, right? I mean, think about Hillary Clinton for a second, right? When I get a call from the FBI, when I get a call from the Washington Post, when I get a call from the New York Times, I hear you have secret servers in the basement of Trump Tower communicating with the Kremlin, right? They made up that lie. They talk about it. They joke about it in their email communication with the Clinton campaign, right? That's their October surprise. And how do they define an October surprise? An October surprise is something that they go out there, they have the media run with, right? It's so damaging that it hurts them at the vote, but the candidate doesn't have enough time to disprove, right? Because you're already in early voting, right? That's your October surprise. Make up a lie, give them so little time to be able to disprove it that by the time they do disprove it, it's already false. Now, in Hillary's case, right, she tried to make up this October surprise. She tried to use it as justification for why the Clinton family lost against a bunch of derelicts, right, who didn't know the first thing about politics. We were real estate developers. We didn't know anything about politics. We've talked about this 100 times. But think about what she did in the process. She pitted the two largest nuclear powers against each other. For a 2-3 year period of time, America and Russia were hardly able to communicate because it had the shadow over it of Donald Trump, colluded with the Kremlin from the basement of Trump Tower, something that the FBI knew on day one was absolute bogus, false lies. We had no secret servers. They knew that. We had no servers in the basement of Trump Tower. They knew that. We were largely cloud-based. They knew that. And they wouldn't come out and say that this is just dishonest, campaign junk. And so instead what happened is you had the two largest nuclear superpowers who didn't have any communication for 3 years, so some greedy woman could try and get 3 extra votes during a campaign, or conversely, on the back end, justify why she lost in such an embarrassing fashion to Donald Trump, Eric Trump, Don Trump Jr., and about 12 other people who were willing to stand on that stage, and about the only 12 people who actually believed in ourselves and believed that we could win outside the American public, who was behind us in ways that, you can't even imagine. And so it's incredibly damaging, and people should go to jail for it. People should absolutely. She should have gone to jail for deleting 33,000 emails, but my father didn't think it was appropriate to send, the wife of a former president and a secretary of state, to prison. Yet when my father was out of office, they tried to imprison me. They tried to imprison everyone. They went after everybody viciously. They tried to bankrupt them. They tried to take our company. They tried to deplatform us, debank us, subpoena us, put us in jail. Charged my father 91 times, put his mugshot all over the damn place. All cases that, by the way, Seth, we've won in the aftermath. But that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to cut the head off the lion. They wanted to make us voiceless. They didn't want us on that stage. They didn't want us in front of that camera. They didn't want us to have any monetary means to be able to defend ourselves. They wanted us gone and dead, and they wanted the same of you and your listeners. And that's why they were turning down their dials as well. That's why they were censoring them. That's why they were gagging them. That's why when you went to YouTube and looked up a video of Donald Trump, it wouldn't show up. They were trying to make us irrelevant, and you know what? It pissed off the American people, and it did not work.
I agree. And I think that a lot of people want to see the gloves come off, right? Because I know that first term is always, you're kind of playing more delicately. You have to make sure you get the re-election, but now second term. And obviously, we're still early in the overall, presidency, but regardless of who it is or what political affiliation, for me, I want justice. I want truth and justice restored. And I'm hoping that we see that, because if we don't have faith in truth and justice anymore in the country, it doesn't matter what the economy looks like. The whole country's lost. Clay, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I could just say when President Trump decided to run for office, or when he announced he was going to run for presidency of the United States, he came to that golden escalator. Eric, you mentioned throughout the book that, you didn't know what a caucus was or what delegates were. I mean, that wasn't your world. I think a lot of us felt the same way. I don't know about you, but I wasn't standing around talking to my living room with my wonderful wife about caucuses and delegates. I would just get out and vote and not show up and vote. But I think we all kind of woke up to the political process with Eric. I think as Eric was asked to speak in front of it, maybe Eric, maybe you disagree with this, but I think when you were asked to speak about caucuses and delegates and these sorts of things and illegal immigration, and you're talking about these things for the first time as a business guy, I think a lot of people in my case who are business guys, we're going, what he just said makes a lot of sense, but I should go look that up. So I think a lot of us woke up all together. And I think, Eric, your life really is sort of the journey that many of us have gone through. And I think we all want to see justice at the same time.
Believe me, if there's anybody that wants to see justice, it's me. When they're taking medical files from my father's room, right, against the law, against HIPAA, when they're taking documents marked attorney-client privilege from my father's room and his office, again, attorney-client privilege. When they're trying to raid our homes, when they're trying to destroy their families, when Jack Smith, through his people who raided Mar-a-Lago, are yelling, I want all security cameras turned off immediately in Mar-a-Lago, which, by the way, I refuse to do. I want justice. What they put us through was hell, and no one has paid the price for it. And by the way, isn't that really ironic that Biden pardoned everybody? He pardoned everybody coming out of the White House. He pardoned Hunter. He pardoned everybody, right? Because he knows exactly what they did. He knows that they weaponized all of government to come after our family and come after our movement. And again, it didn't work. But what has worked is we won the greatest political victory in the history of the country. We won every single swing state. We won the popular vote. Now we have the House. Now we have the Senate. Now we have the executive branch, right? We have a 6-3 majority on the Supreme Court. The mainstream media is largely dead. They no longer have the voice that they had before. They become so much less relevant than they've ever been before. And my father's throwing so much lead in the air that these guys can't even catch it, right? I mean, he's doing such a great job. You see him all day long. And you have a Democratic Party that's in total shambles. They don't know who they are. They don't know what they stand for. the only thing they stand for is being the antithesis of Trump. And honestly, the American people obviously don't like that. Hence the reason, obviously, my father won the popular vote in this country, and I think he's even stronger now. And so what do these people do? They resort to violence. That's always what they do. They resort to violence when it came to my father in Butler. They tried again in Palm Beach. Obviously, they shot our good friend Charlie in the neck. When you lose the argument, resort to violence. That's been the entire playbook of the Democratic Party. Their first playbook was identity politics. That stopped working. And so now they're just becoming violent people, and it's incredibly worrisome to watch.
Are you concerned that this country could descend into some kind of civil war? Because when I see the buildup of Antifa, I see what's happening in different areas, Oregon as an example, and even you see the call for this on both sides of the aisle. The call for that. I'm worried because I've also studied history a lot, and if you look at historically, whether it was the Spanish Civil War or any of the civil wars, it's never followed by something good. It usually creates a power vacuum where you have evil that comes in. Is that something that concerns you? Is the country kind of destabilizing into something like that?
Listen, I think right now because we won, we have the strongest country we've ever had before. I mean, look at our economy, look at our stock market today, right? Look at every aspect. Look at energy prices. Look at inflation coming back down to normal levels. Again, the stock market's been booming. We're doing great. Tariffs are bringing in billions of dollars a year. We should have. What I am worried about is the radical left. I know you just mentioned this on both sides. I would almost challenge you on that. I've only seen it on one side. I mean, I have only seen it on one side. I saw my father's head almost get blown off. I saw a good friend get shot in the neck. I mean, I saw Steve Scalise, who I know very well. I saw him take a couple bullets. I saw them try and kill Kavanaugh. I mean, I've only seen the bullets fly one way. By the way, I can't tell you how many packages of white powder I've opened up, right? I see that, that congressman the other day who talks about, I mean, you saw those unthinkable text messages. I'm actually only seeing it, going in one direction. I mean, I've spoken at Clay Clark's events where we were surrounded by Antifa, where they were leaving things, nails and spikes under people's tires to otherwise destroy the tires of people's cars. I mean, I've seen that, I've attended thousands of MAGA events. I've never once seen anybody even remotely try and inflict harm on anybody else. So I don't think it's actually happening on both sides, listen, there might be an off incident here or there. I see it disproportionately happening by the radical left in this country who are unhinged, who are shooting rifles at ICE officers, who are burning down churches in this country, including during the quote-unquote Summer of Love in Washington, D.C., where they torched St. John's Episcopal Church. I would disagree. I think it's happening toward one party and not toward the other.
Yeah, actually, good point. I guess I'll clarify a little bit more so in seeing that what I was seeing, especially after the Charlie Kirk assassination, that you saw pretty prominent voices on the right saying, is this the next step, right? Not like they were calling for it, but it's more as a defensive posturing of saying, look at the violence that's happening. Is this where we're headed, right? Not necessarily saying, hey, we want civil war, because I think that a lot of people, they understand, especially people that understand the Constitution, Second Amendment, they know what that brings. So I agree with you on that.
We can never allow that to happen.
I agree completely.
We can never, ever allow that to happen. We have the greatest country in the world. We have the greatest superpower in the world. We can't allow that to happen. At the same time, we can't allow anarchy, right? And that's what the left has divulged into. And we better have law enforcement to clean up these streets. We better stop the terror of our cities in this country. Look how fast my father was able to clean up Washington, D.C. It's a beautiful thing. Beautiful thing. In 12 days, they effectively went from one of the murder capitals of the country to zero, to perfect peace, to perfect prosperity. Then all of a sudden he sends National Guard into Chicago, and Pritzker goes crazy because I guess Pritzker likes seeing death and destruction all over the place, because I've done a lot of work in Chicago. I know the city very well, and that's all I've ever seen over the last 10 years, 15 years that I've been in Chicago. And by the way, the city's been going downhill for the last 50, maybe longer, all under radical left Democrats. They keep on getting worse and worse and worse and worse, and yet my father wants to solve a problem, by the way, in a blue city. I think there's a lot of people in previous administrations who would have just said, you know what, that city's being run by the Democrats. Let it go. It's just it's a bad reflection on them. No, my father wants to clean up this nation. He wants to stop the crime. He wants to fix these cities, regardless of whether or not they're in blue jurisdictions or red jurisdictions. And despite that, they're not even open to the help. In fact, they're obstructionists to the help that would otherwise keep young kids from getting murdered and assassinated on weekends on American city streets. It really blows my mind.
And me too. And it presents a kind of a tricky dynamic because obviously I'm not a fan of federal police coming in to the state level, but when you have the state level completely compromised governors and mayors and everything, yet you have a just at the federal level, which is, doesn't happen very often. It's like, well, what do you do, right? Because you still want to keep control and you still want to go in there. But yeah, if you've got governors like Newsom or other governors that, seem like there's an agenda to actually drive their states into complete chaos, the question of like, okay, bringing in something from the top down, is it justified? And I'd rather see law and order, to be honest. But I want to actually transition to a different topic with you and hear your thoughts on this, because I've noticed that in watching, especially your father's discussion, and as he's kind of sharing more of his personal journey, especially after Butler, I've seen that he's talked more about faith and God and the overall idea of good versus evil. What is your perspective on that battle, like the battle of good versus evil as it's playing out? And how have you seen your father change his tune, or has he changed his tune? Yeah. What are you seeing happen at that level? Because I think that's where this all kind of buries into, is actually fundamentally that this is God versus Satan. This is a bigger thing, but I'll let you answer.
Yeah, this has been a big theme in Under Siege. I mean, I talk a lot in my book about this because I truly believe that God's hand has been on his shoulder in ways that people can't even imagine. I heard Mike Huckabee say it early on in the primaries when he was actually running against my father. He said right after one of the debates, he goes, I feel like the hand of God has been on your father's shoulder, and that, not only is he going to win the primaries, again, he was competing, right? So this was against his own interest, but he's going to beat Hillary Clinton. He's going to be the next commander in chief, and he's going to guide this nation. And, I saw how God protected him in Butler, Pennsylvania. I saw that perfect American flag fold up right above his head, right? Which is too coincidental to be. I mean, American flags just don't fold up like that. I can't tell you how many instances throughout the course of the campaign, and really, we had a lot of ugly, a lot of dark and evil times, and every single time we had a low point, we would see this beacon of hope, and every single time when we thought we had the lowest moment, all of a sudden we would be surprised by this little glimmer of light that would guide us in the next direction, and to win against unthinkable odds. I mean, to beat Hillary Clinton with a 5-1, I mean, she literally had 5 times as much capital. We effectively, self-funded our campaign. Somebody who knew something about politics, believe me, somebody was guiding us, somebody was giving us wisdom, somebody was protecting the family. To be protected on that stage again in Butler, there's too many coincidences to even, to even begin to go through all of them. But it's a big aspect of this book. It's a big aspect of who I am. It's a big aspect of my family. It's a big aspect of how I was raised, and it's certainly a big aspect of how I raised my children.
Yeah, you and I both. And Clay, I know you as well. I'll let you comment, Clay.
Yeah, I just wanted to share something real quick here. I've had the opportunity to read Eric's book from cover to cover, and have been a part of just providing some feedback on this book. And I will tell you, as a father, Seth, I have 5 kids. And so I've always wanted to know, what was it like being raised by Donald J. Trump? And if that is what you want to know, Eric goes through. Eric is a very detailed journaler, by the way. So he's got unbelievable stories and anecdotal examples of how his father raised him, working on the construction sites. Before the age of 13, his dad has him working on the construction sites. Then part 2 of the book is really a book about what do you do when your dad decides to run for presidency, you're 33 years old, and the dad hands off the company to you. I mean, what do you do when your dad's running for presidency and he turns over the company to you? And then part 3 is like, we forget because it happened so fast, but the Mar-a-Lago raids, what was it like? The morning after the Butler assassination attempt there, I actually spoke to Eric Trump that morning. Eric called me, and just how calm and cool and collected you choose to be, Eric, when you're going through something like that. I talked to Eric the day of the assassination attempt and the day after, and it's just the ability to compartmentalize and keep the main thing, and turn your bitterness into betterness. The book is incredible. And I was telling Eric, I said, Eric, this book, where there's so many people that listen to Man in America, there's so many people that have been to the Reawaken tour, and we might never get a personal invite to go to Mar-a-Lago, but what if we could do a thing where everybody who buys the book, Seth, is entered in for an opportunity to win a trip, or a drawing, a chance to win a trip to go to Mar-a-Lago to have dinner with Eric and I. And Eric was going, okay, where are you going with this? And I said, and what we'll do, Eric, is we're going to give out your cell phone number. We'll put your phone number on the screen, and that way everybody who watches Man in America, they'll just keep it private. They can just text you once they've bought a copy of the book. And Eric set up a hard pivot here, emotionally compartmentalizing here.
Ladies and gentlemen, our world is being poisoned. You know that. Every day we're exposed to more chemicals sprayed into our skies, leaching into our food, and polluting our air and water. From pesticides and heavy metals to hormone disruptors and synthetic additives, these toxins are bombarding our bodies and destroying our health. But there's something you can do to fight back, and it starts with your gut. Kimchi 1 from Bright Core Nutrition contains over 900 strains of beneficial probiotics that help flush toxins, restore gut balance, and support your immune system. So when your gut's strong, your body can actually resist all these toxins. You're going to feel better. You're going to have better digestion, more energy, clearer thinking, stronger immunity, even improvements in your skin, hair, and metabolism. And this isn't just hype. Studies show that fermented foods like kimchi can reduce the risk of obesity, improve blood sugar, and support whole body wellness. Kimchi 1 is all natural, non-GMO, dairy-free, gluten-free, and 100% made in the USA by a company that actually cares about your health. Imagine that. And today, you can get an exclusive offer just for my viewers. 25% off with the code MANINAMERICA by clicking on the link in the description below. Or just call my friends over at Brightcore now at 888-575-6488, and their educated staff will make sure that Kimchi 1 is right for you. Again, that's 888-575-6488.
Let's say yes to the idea, but no to giving out my phone number. And so right here, Seth, this is my sign. It's custom. It's handmade. Anybody who buys a copy of Eric's book between now and October 14th, if you text a proof of purchase to my cell phone number, 918-851-0102. So you buy the book on Amazon, Under Siege, and you text a proof of purchase to my cell phone number, you are entered in for a chance to win dinner with Eric Trump and I at Mar-a-Lago. Now, if you're in a tight spot, if you're watching today's show and you say, hey, I'm in a tight spot, you can just text this number, and you're also entered in for the drawing. So we'd love it if you'd buy a copy of the book Under Siege, but if for some reason you're in a tight spot and you can't afford to buy the book right now, we get it. You can text that number. And Eric, this is going to be a fun way for somebody to have dinner with you, and then they're going to get to experience that whole Under the Siege theme as they're with me. They're going to go, why is Clay with me here? I wanted to be with Eric. Why am I under siege? And that's all part of the theme. Eric, what's going to happen for that lucky winner, sir?
Well, first of all, it's Mar-a-Lago. It's the greatest place in the entire world, and you know, so few people ever get to see it. So come. I promise you'll have the greatest meal of your entire life. But beyond that, make your voices heard. I mean, make your voices heard. But go buy a copy of the book. Support the cause. But beyond that, this was an attack against all of us. This was an attack against all of America. This was an attack against religion. It was an attack against freedom. It was an attack against family. It was an attack against, red, white, and blue, something, that we adore so much. They were coming after each and every single one of us. And so this story is for all of us. And by the way, it's also a story of how good can triumph over evil. And that's exactly what it did here against against unthinkable odds. It is David and Goliath, right? I mean, that is the story. How did we beat the federal government? How did we beat these indictments? How did we beat the funding deficits, the Democrats versus us, they're raising 5, 6, 7 times as much as us. How do we beat the mainstream media in this country that was so weaponized? I mean, 98% of the media's coverage against our family and my father was negative. And so people are speaking with their pocketbooks. I mean, the book, as I mentioned before, went to #1 almost instantly on Amazon in every single category. People are pissed off. And by the way, as my father gets accused of weaponizing, the system against James Comey the other day, because it very much clear to me that I certainly think he lied to Ted Cruz, and as he was indicted, and everybody saying Donald Trump is weaponizing the entire system. I hope if you have anybody in your life that said that to you, that's on the opposite side, I hope you get this book and ask them to read the first half of this book and tell me whether or not they think that the system is being weaponized against the Democrats. We lived through hell. Our entire party lived through hell. Both of you guys lived through hell. They tried to take us all out. They tried to do so in the most crass, heinous way that you could possibly imagine. And so, listen, we're going to have a great time at Mar-a-Lago for one lucky winner, and I promise you, whoever wins is going to have the time of their life. So definitely text Clay's number. But go support the cause. Go buy a book. Send a book to your liberal neighbor, have them read half of it with an open mind, and let me know what you think.
Yeah, good idea. Or maybe do like a book swap. Say, look, I'll show you mine, you show me yours, right? So say, look, I'll read one of your books. I'll read Obama's biography if you read Eric Trump's book. And
I like this idea. Do 107 days. We call it 107 days of sobriety, 107 days, and then put that next to Under Siege, and tell me who wins the day in terms of story and perseverance and a hardship, and and tell me after reading that who you'd rather have see run the United States of America, the greatest country by far in the world, and maybe you can talk about family competence and overall competence after you read those two books. I implore people to do that side by side and line them up next to one another
Yeah. Well, as sons of presidents, I'd love to see the comparison between you and Hunter Biden in life accomplishments. So, though his artwork sells for a lot of money.
Another great book to line up. Hey, with my book, you won't find no illicit drugs, no prostitution, no shady companies. No companies that don't sell a product and don't have a website. No finger painting, and selling finger art to foreign nationals and other people. You won't see any of that. You'll see beautiful children. You'll see God, and you'll see a wonderful American business that works very, very hard to be extremely good at what we do.
Well, there we go. Well, Clay and Eric, thank you again for your time. I'll make sure that the links that we talked about, especially for the book, is in the show description. I'll put Clay's phone number in there. I'll be texting that later too. Maybe I can be the winner. I promise I won't cheat on that. But thank you both for your time. It's great having you on the show, and just keep the fight strong. We have a long road ahead of us, but thank you so much.
We do. Thanks so much, Seth.
Thank you.
All right. Great. So half hour.
Thanks, buddy.
Was that good? That was okay, Eric?
You're amazing. You're amazing, bud. You're amazing.
Okay.
That was fun.
Okay, thank you. I tried to have not like all easy questions, but I think it was good.
No, it was wonderful. It was great. You're awesome, man.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Seth.
buddy.
Thank you, Eric.
Bye,
See you
guys.
guys.
Thank you. Can you remember a moment when your body didn't heal like it used to after getting sick or pushing yourself too hard? Maybe you've noticed that recovery takes longer, energy feels lower, and your body just doesn't bounce back the way it used to. Well, it turns out the secret to healing, recovery, and resilience isn't luck. It's stem cells. These are your body's built-in repair crew, and as we age, that system slows down. That's exactly why Qualia Stem Cell was created. Your cells are powerful. Make sure they stay that way with Qualia's innovative stem cell formula. It's crafted with nature's most powerful healers like sea buckthorn and royal jelly to help your body renew, repair, and thrive. You only need to take it for about 4 days a month to support your body's natural regenerative systems. So if you've ever felt like your body just doesn't bounce back like it used to, whether after a tough workout or getting sick or just the wear and tear of life, this is for you. Qualia Stem Cell was designed to help you heal, recover, and keep going strong. And right now, you can try it for up to 50% off at qualialife.com/Seth. So use the code Seth for an extra 15%. Now that link is in the description, so make sure you click on it. Your body is built to repair itself. Qualia just helps it do that better. And thanks for Qualia for sponsoring this episode.